Tell me about that, your industry, because that's something that you have a good insight into. And we've touched on this before, haven't we? Where, you know people in your industry who have spent all their savings and are now struggling to pay the bills. I mean, talk about the importance of entertainment and what's happened to the entertainment industry.
Well, the thing is, you get the cynics who say, oh, well, I mean, it's, you're just actors, you're just singers. You're not on the front line doing it. Things like, hang on a minute. How do you think that you all have got through this last 2 years? You've got through it by television. You've got through it by downloading theatre. You've got through it by Netflix. You've got through it by Sky Films. That's because of the entertainment industry. But that's not just those of us on screen. That's everybody involved. And of course, our industry went like that. And but of course, people were penalised because with actors, with people in our industry, you can have a really good year, but then you might not work for 2 years. But you're being, but of course, you're financially, and this is not my area of strength, but you're being penalised for what the good year you had 2 years ago. So you're not entitled to any money. So Excluded UK, who did a brilliant job, I got involved with them as much as I could, because some of the people that I know, they had not one penny throughout this.
Excluded UK is a charity, is it? Or
pardon? Excluded UK, yeah, is a charity. My son's a musician. And his hurt and desperation was for all of this. When Matthew tours, there are 91 people on that tour that he felt responsible for. 91 people just out of a job, all of the crew, who've got families to support. And again, I'm not saying that of course, at the beginning, nobody knew what was happening. But now, Lucy, we've got the jabs. We know that the variants are going to come and go. We were told and promised that we had to live with COVID. I'm sorry, but if we keep getting these bloody daily death counts, I think a lot of people don't realise that about 10,000 people a week die anyway in the United Kingdom. More sometimes. That's often just in England and Wales. I think that week ending November the 19th, in England and Wales, 12,101 people died. 900 of those with COVID. If we can't live with that now, with the jabs, with all of this, when is it going to move on? We had the jabs, the vaccine passports. Now you've got to have the jabs and a PCR certificate to go. But you've got natural immunity. I'm going away. I might test positive because I had COVID less than 90 days ago. It's like, we've got to stop. Example, this morning as we do this interview, the Daily Star headline doesn't mention it's Norway. That's terrible. It says 60 cases of Omicron at super spreader event. You then go on to read it and it says that nobody is seriously ill. So unless it's hospitalizations and deaths, it doesn't matter. It can't matter. And also, historically, cases, you're a health editor, cases were people who were ill, not positive PCR tests. That's a difference as well, And I was misquoted the other day about the mask thing. I've said, I'll die on the mental health hill. I won't die on the vaccine, or I'm vaccinated, pro-vaccine, won't die on the vaccine or the mask hill. What I said on Loose Women was, I said, the way we wear masks, they're as much use as a chocolate fire god, is what I said. Because we have a mask, most of which don't work, has been, a lot of the really thin ones are the cotton ones. You're supposed to have the proper fitted ones. We pick them up, we put them on the table. Apparently, the minute we put them on the table, null and void. And that's what we all do. They're in a pocket. Oh, have you got a mask? This is most of us. Oh, hang on a minute. Sticking to an old Werther's original. Oh, here's one. There it goes on there. And I said, the way we wear them is as much use as a chocolate fire god. Of course, most of the media. Denise Welch horrifies people by saying masks are a chocolate fire god. Completely misquoted.
Yeah. And scientists would agree with you.
Where the masks work, wear your mask, fill your boots. But to me, they've also become a status as well. They've become, I am not a Trump supporter. And for someone left-leaning all of my life, as someone who is a Remainer, it's been very difficult for me because people on the left have chosen to hate this government, hate the Tories, but happy to do every single thing they say at the drop of a hat. And those people on the other side are the ones resisting more. It's like, it's to me.
Politicized, politicization of health, which is not healthy itself.
It's really not. And as I say, we really thought that, and this kind of, hanging over the Christmas thing again, it's just so unfair. And so on Instagram, I will post quite long posts because I have a lot of people that I feel duty bound to help. If it's 2 people, it's enough for me. And judging by what happened in Birmingham yesterday, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
People go, if anybody thinks I'm doing this for anything other than those reasons, why would I, with a fairly successful career, put myself on the line like this? I've never felt so much of a calling. I'm not religious. I can only imagine this was what it feels like to religious people. I felt I had a calling. And when it started, Lucy, was the bridges in the clap for carers. I suddenly saw the emperor without his clothes, and I couldn't then see him with his clothes on. And it was when we were clapping for carers outside. We were told to stand at our front door and clap for carers like this, which we all did. And it became a part of our lives that we cared about very much. I then watched Westminster Bridge on a Thursday night, always on the television, with the ambulances, the police, the fire engines, all lining the bridges with the sirens going, everybody outside, thousands of people on the bridge. Cressida Dick was there one night, all the nurses coming out the hospitals, all like this, singers going down with the karaoke machines. It's gala night, it's Thursday night. Where's COVID? Where the fuck is COVID now, tonight, on Thursdays? Okay? I'm looking on Twitter and you've got like the police in, somewhere going, this was us out on Thursday night. It's like, well, and that week I saw in a newspaper, when we were only supposed to have 3 people at a funeral or something, there was a piece of footage of 2 sons and their mother at the father's funeral, socially distanced. And the two sons had gone to comfort their mother, who'd become a widow after being married for 60 years. And they were threatened with arrest if they didn't separate from her. Meanwhile, all of the urgency services are all outside clapping for carers on a bridge, which the government were supporting every single week. And I just thought, nah, it's bullshit. It's bullshit. The virus is not bullshit. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
And that was what I couldn't then unsee it.
The rules were arbitrary
and that's really where the hypocrisy. And the thing is, how much hypocrisy do we have to witness to think, why are we taking notice of these people? We now hear that when our loved ones were spending Christmas, because people took this so seriously last year, that Granny and Grandad couldn't come for Christmas dinner. And my dad would have spent his last Christmas on his own if we had possibly followed rules, right? And then we find that Boris was having a party a week before at his house. Matt Hancock, to me, the worst thing Boris has said in this whole thing was who cares that Matt Hancock, who he was having sex with, none of us care or even want to think about it, to be honest. But, the fact is that it was when those pictures came out and Boris said, anyway, it's a private matter, we're moving on. How dare you? This man has inflicted these restrictions on us. Neil Ferguson, the man of social distancing. You can play tennis with your partner, but you can't have sex with them. I'm sure many people were quite happy to do that. But basically, he then ships his married mistress in, unsocially distanced, into his house. Dominic Cummings, the walk in Barnard Castle. It's like, oh my God, how can you not see? How are you still buying into this? I just don't get it. But then again, the other people don't get how I feel. So I can only speak out and help those people that I think there's nothing I can do about it. So I know people go, but you're not changing anything. But what I'm doing is I'm helping people who think they're going mad by realizing that they're not, that the way they're thinking is actually how a lot of us are thinking, but they don't have a voice or a platform in order to speak out. And often, families have become so divided that, this has been such a tragedy of this, Lucy, and we've all experienced it. People that we loved and respected, we now think, I wouldn't be able to talk to you because I can't believe what your stance is on this, and vice versa.
It's terribly divided. I mean, in just going back to your father, do you feel that his last years were, you know, did he suffer with the lockdown?
Well, he did. I mean, my sister and I made the decision that there is no way that we weren't going to be seeing Dad during lockdown. We weren't going to be waving through a window. We were very careful because, as we all know, in the first lockdown, we didn't know. But what I knew, as being a mental health advocate and somebody who has suffered from major depressive disorder for 32 years, I was also aware of the mental stuff as well as with my sister. So we still went to see Dad. You know, Debbie would put a mask on. We'd go outside. Debbie would take her kids over and sit outside with him having a, you know, we kept that up. But, you know, Dad would say, can I go and see, because he was always aware of how any negative press would impact on me.
Yeah.
You know, and he'd say, some of my dad was like such a rule breaker if he could have, you know. Some of my friends are having a little get together up, you know, or they're going to have the VE Day street party because suddenly, you know, whatever. And I said, Dad, unfortunately, the press at the moment are so desperate to find people who are breaking lockdown. I said, I can't let you do it. I mean, at the time, the press were, who was it? James Cracknell had gone to visit his dad in the garden. And the actual thing was he had actually sat apart, but one of the newspapers had put them together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, how dare you? That's disgusting. But also, how dare you out somebody for going to sit with their elderly father in a garden? Nobody will ever again, ever. At Christmas, I will be with my family or I will be in jail. I you know, nobody ever again, Lucy, will tell me what to do as regards that or who I can sit on a park bench with.
So he was very sociable.
And look at Australia and Germany. The other thing as well is that all I have ever done is ask questions and I can't get the answers for them. I'm very curious about the vaccine passport situation because when my dad died, he died on the wedding. We had the funeral / party celebration, pink coffin, Frank Sinatra, our friend Louis who was a brilliant Frank Sinatra singer. It was a wonderful celebration. The following Tuesday, I had said I'd go and see my friend in a show in Manchester. And I went and they said, have you got your passport? I reluctantly showed my vaccine certificate. I went in. I had COVID. I didn't know. And yet, if I was in Germany, I would have got into the theatre. My unvaccinated friend would have shown her I don't have the virus certificate, wouldn't have got in. I don't understand that, how that works. It's not working. The question I ask is, if masks completely worked, how come Germany, who has had a mask mandate for almost this last year, has got the highest amount of cases in Europe? I'm not saying, I'm not a don't wear one person, you know, at all. But it's these questions that I've just wanted answers to, really.
Yeah, there's the inconsistencies and the arbitrary rules. I mean, has it impacted on your career, do you think, that your stance, your feeling of a calling?
No, it really hasn't, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, whatever that is, although some things we considered conspiracies have actually happened, you know. I'm absolutely not. I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-mask. I ask questions about them. I'm vaccinated, you know, and I've also had 2 jabs and COVID. You know, all of these things I just question. But I have spoken out freely about it. I'm not frightened of speaking out about it. Like I've said, this is something I'm really not. I so fervently believe in the damage that the great portion of the media. I'm disgusted at the questions they ask at Prime Minister's Question Time. All they seem to ask is, why aren't we going into deeper restrictions, Prime Minister? Why aren't you locking us down? Please lock us down. You know, I can't bear it. And you know, or
you think it's because it doesn't affect their sort of Zoom calls?
Because it doesn't affect their lives. It doesn't affect their lives.
They can get the delivery.
And at the moment, Lucy, there is no reason to take further precautions. Our hospitalizations and deaths have been going down without restrictions. So, you know, I'm not saying don't be cautious. Obviously, it's a new variant, but there's always going to be a new variant. We were told that we had to live with COVID. So we try to live with it, and then they try and snatch it away from us again. We can't move on.
Why do you think that's happened? Why do you think it's happening? What's going on? Do you think that?
Well, the thing is, I don't know. I mean, what was it that Michael Gove said in, 2009, unrelated to anything, obviously, like this, which was not a diagram transposing, but once you give the state emergency powers, they will never, ever, ever give them back.
No.
And I think that there is, I think you've got to be of a certain, who would want to be a prime minister during this time? Who would want to be? And I'm sorry, but I see some of them all over the world. There is a kind of there's a look, I think there is a big power trip going on. I think I'm not in the Bill Gates taking our DNA 5G. I'm not remotely ever been down those rabbit holes, not absolutely going there. I think in our country, I think it's fear. I think it's total fear, listening to polls. The polls are mostly made up of people who queue 9 hours for toilet rolls and pasta at the mention of the word lockdown that might be happening in 2028, and they're off to Tesco with their queues. How much bolognese and pooing you're going to have in life, I have no idea. But anyway, this is what they do. And the polls seem to be made up of those people. Our government want to be seen to be doing the right thing, but they clearly know that it's not based on anything, because then they have G7, and as soon as they think the cameras aren't there, the masks come off. You've got people like 108-year-old Joe Biden. You've got people like the Queen, two of the most, elderly but important people in the world, all hugging and dancing down at the beach barbecue. If they were so concerned about that, they wouldn't be doing that. But it's one rule for them and one rule for us. And they want to be seen to be doing the right thing. The Prime Minister himself said wearing a mask gives a message or some such thing.
Neil Ferguson has said that too.
Who?
Neil Ferguson. He said it's to keep the fear up, and people in Public Health England have said this is a measure to, there's no good evidence.
Well, look at Susan Mickey that they keep wheeling out. She's a behavioural psychologist. It's all about this nudging and keeping the fear up. But keeping the fear up is making us a world of people living on the edge of anxiety.
In September last year, you asked the government, if you're going to frighten us with how many are dying every day, please enlighten us and tell us how things have improved. Tell us when no one is dying. I'll do anything to help balance the fear mongering. And then you were branded, that was when you were branded deluded and dangerous and a COVID denier. Was that fair?
No, of course it wasn't, because it couldn't be further from the truth. And actually the response to that interview on This Morning was 99% in my favour, because people actually knew that, the main criticism from people, and bearing in mind, it's a small portion normally, it is support for people who are frightened to speak out. Many, many people in my industry who are frightened to speak out because they feel a bit cancelled. Many people wouldn't believe.
I'd like to talk.
They wouldn't believe the amount of people who contact me personally.
Really, yeah.
And also, some people use me a little bit as a sort of drug mule. They'll send me things that they want me to put out. And that's also people in the medical profession, Lucy. And you know who those people are. I would never out them. But it's like when, Sue from Basingstoke goes, oh, as if anyone in the medical profession would talk to you. This is what it is, which is why I always, show my producers at work.
Yeah.
When I'm going to say something, I say, but I want you to, so that I can say on television, my producers have seen this dialogue that I've had with this, infectious disease doctor or some such thing,
Have you been censored? Or have you been censored?
What, sorry?
Have you been censored? Have you been
No, never once. Ever once. Never once, because if I ever mention any data, I'm not stupid. I'm not, academically, was never the most academic person at school, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not going to suddenly make up my own data. So, for example, last year, when we had the first wave and then it was over, by that time, the doctors had learned that they were to prone patients, so that they were to turn them on their front rather than ventilating all the sick patients. We also had dexamethasone, remdesivir, I think you call it, and another drug that was massively helping those people who were very, very sick with COVID. So my message was, I'm not saying that COVID's gone. None of us know whether it's coming back again at that point, especially not me. I said, but what I'm trying to say to you is it's not around now. And if it comes again, we will never go back to square one, because we already have learned, the scientists, the doctors, have already learned much more treatments. So what I would do is that everyone was so frightened. So I would find out, for example, say, and this is not a direct quote, I'm saying Doncaster, it could be anywhere. I would find out about a Doncaster hospital. I would then go and check with the ONS. I would then speak to somebody in the know at Doncaster who were very happy to give me the information. Anybody could have got it. I would then say, put on Twitter, great news. Doncaster Hospital has gone 8 weeks without a COVID patient. You know, what a celebration. Pauline on Twitter put, you're grotesque. You are dangerous. It's like, I'm sorry, Pauline, that I don't have more deaths to tell you about, but I'm just saying, at the moment, Doncaster is COVID-free. Hallelujah. Some people don't want to hear it. It is the Covidian cult that has got into some people. And it's a terrible shame. But I think there's a lot of people who have had no lives, very sad lives, and I feel sorry for those people, but they loved it when we didn't have a life either. And you know, I know that to be true. And so all I ever was doing was trying to bring, because we never heard the good news. And then what happened was, when deaths went down to almost none, suddenly the news reports were cases. There wasn't enough deaths to keep us frightened at night. So it was the cases. Yeah. Meanwhile, even now, okay, so say, for example, 45 people died in England yesterday. That's around the figure. Yeah. 500 died of cancer. 500 died of heart disease. 112 died of sepsis. 20 plus died from suicide. We never hear about them. The response is, you can't catch cancer. That's what you're dealing with.